Right, folks. Now, so if you want to, you know, we've probably a lot on there, to be honest. So I think most of you, maybe you Tracy, have you met Elma before? Ah, right, yeah. Well, so everybody has met Elma. No? No, I've joined the years.
Workshop, Elma won't be another one.
So I'm going to leave you in our capable hands when I go and knock this forward. Over here.
I'm on his own job.
See, when he was talking about nothing.
I always say you but long for off when I go right there.
Right.
Right.
All right.
If we hear you scream, John, we'll come and rescue you.
Okay, just because we've all been doing stuff, lunch and all of that before we start onto it, we'll just take a few moments to center ourselves. So that's bringing you to a comfortable seat. So you can lie down if you like, it's your choice, but come to a position where your spine is upright. And the three structures of your pelvic bone and your rib cage and your head are all in alignment. And that's what we want in good posture. So sitting, holding in your feet, whatever way that suits you, lovely. And then just close over your eyes and take a few moments now just to settle in. Closing over the eyes is that journey from the outer world to the inner world. Not always easy for students to do, and not always easy for new teachers to teach. So start with the tangible bit. So start now again, just feeling the parts that are touching the ground. So have a sense of what your feet are doing and if they're comfortable. Your knees, your seat. Feel again the spine, the length of the spine, the balance of the head, rib cage, and bowl of the pelvis. Hands resting on your thighs. Take a breath into your nose. Sigh the breath out and drop into your seat. And you may be surprised how much residual tension we can be holding. Do that again. Breathe into your nose. Sigh the breath out and drop into your seat. One more time. Letting go the weight of the body, letting go any holding. Now close your mouth and ask yourself, can I breathe comfortably through my nose? And then bring all of your attention to the tips of your nostrils. We're moving to breath, which is subtle, but it's still tangible because you can feel it brushing the nostrils as you inhale and again as you exhale. So gather all of your attention and fix it at the tips of your nose and begin to feel the cool air in your nostrils as you breathe in and the warm brush on the nostrils as you breathe out. Can you stay with that for the next 5 breaths? Breath coming and breath going. And you're feeling the sensations of that breath on the tips of your nose. You're like a sentry. At the same time, it's as if you're tasting the breath through your nose. Inhale and exhale for 5 breaths. Stay with it. And now ask yourself, is my breath erratic or steady? How would you rate it? Breath is still coming and going, you're still watching. Is your breath fast or slow? Do you even know? Is your breath noisy or is it silent? And then I want you to bring both hands onto the tummy, the area below the navel. And I want you now to start to breathe out and draw the tummy back to push the breath out further. And then just relax, the breath will automatically flow in. I want you to shift your focus from the tips of the nostrils to the abdomen. And breathing out, draw the tummy back slowly as you push the breath out slower still. And each time you breathe out, that's what you're doing. What are you doing? You're slowing down the exhale, pushing the breath out from the motor in the tummy, your core muscles. Each time you relax, the breath flows in. And as you continue extending the out breath, the in breath comes in slower and deeper, the tummy will start to swell beneath your hands. And now you're feeling the movement of your breathing beneath your hands, drawing the tummy back as you breathe out, feeling the tummy swell gently as you breathe in. And now the motor of your breathing lies here. Continue to slow down the exhale. That's the only work there is. The inhale comes in all by itself. But each time you breathe out a little slower, the incoming breath matches it and comes in a little deeper. In yoga, we call this abdominal breathing. Not because you're breathing into the abdomen, that's impossible, but you are breathing into the deeper parts of the lungs. But the movement is felt in the abdomen. The movement of your breathing now is right in the center of the body. And when we breathe like this, slow, steady, measured breathing, the nervous system switches into relaxation. And do that for 5 more breaths. Just push the exhalation out slowly. Receive the inhalation back in deeply. Feeling the movement of your breathing in the tummy. Slow, steady, rhythmical breathing. All of your attention on what you're doing. This is a practice. So after the next exhalation, then stop doing that, drawing back the tummy, and just relax, and your breathing will return to everyday breathing. But from that practice, your everyday breath may be slower, maybe steadier, maybe deeper. And now we're in a different mind state. We are more centered, we are more present, we are more ready to attend to the work of the afternoon. Slowly open your eyes. Hello again. So just to say that sometimes when you start to bring, because I'm saying that because in restorative yoga, we'll answer the question maybe later on, how do you cope with the long hold and the long silent pauses? Because for the students that can be difficult, what might be more difficult for the teacher, the long spaces of silence, what do you do? Well, I think firstly, you don't have long spaces of silence without some form of interjection because people can't handle it. So when you put people into the poses in restorative yoga, when we get to that, they're there, they're not moving. That alone is challenging for somebody, just to stop and be there. And then if you don't interject with some kind of guidance, long silences in the beginning, they don't work, you need to interject. And what I just done there is a nice interjection. Breathing. Bring your attention to the breathing. Point to the nose, the tummy. You don't have to introduce breathing practices that are about long holds of breath. That's not conducive either. There's a whole world of guidance around breathing. That is very, very simple. Like what I just did. Getting people to pay attention to feeling the breath. Because when people come new to practice as well, to ask them to pay attention to their breathing, or throw them into a spin. Pay attention to their breath, what do? They hold. They listen for more guidance. So the whole area of breath and paying attention to it and you telling them to do stuff with it takes a wee while for them to get into that flow. Same with beginners, but especially I think maybe with restorative yoga, because you could have people coming to it that are already maybe ill, that may be recovering from illness, maybe are in pain, and maybe other factors that bring them to this area of yoga. That maybe in the other areas of yoga, it may not be the same. That makes sense? Mm-hmm. Okay. So we'll visit that when we actually go into the postures. Just
I think the other thing not to do, which when students are nervous, that you fill every moment of space with talk. And you'll find them nearly jumping up to say, shut the book. That's not right either. You know, too much talk is not what you want either. Because you will also find this maybe a new space, you know. We're in a regular class, we're giving guidance, you're moving and people are moving and all of that. But in the restorative, it's very silent space, very held space. So getting familiar with pausing and interjecting and not leaving the pauses too much. And the interjections, as I said, when we talk about breathing, which we will give guidance in the pauses we come to, keep those that guidance very simple. So my reason for being here today is really about anatomy. See, and the skeleton is wrong too. I'm glad I brought me skeleton. To talk about anatomy in restorative yoga, but in particular to talk about anatomy of the spine in restorative yoga, because primarily that's what you're doing. You're placing bodies in positions, supporting them. And when it comes to the spine, how do you know what positions to pick? Range of motion, the spine range of motion, and that's your class now. That's your guide. The spine can come into alignment, posture pose. It can bend forward, it can bend back, it can bend sideways, it can rotate. There's your class. And then you cherry pick whatever forward bends, back bends, side bends that you want. So we look at that. Range of motion, even in teaching regular yoga classes, is a good way to have your anatomy to inform your yoga. Because if you don't have something other than, well, I think I just do the poses I like, that's not usually a good plan. Because you could eliminate a whole lot of poses that people would benefit from. So range of motion is usually a good plan. So before we get into it, just to ask the question, you've all done teacher training course, you've all done a level of anatomy. What is anatomy? I go right back to the basics of why, ask questions all the time. Well, anatomy is the study of the structure of your body. Physiology is the study of the function of the body, like your body system, your breathing system, your heart, the function. But anatomy is the structure, your skeleton. So today we're going to be looking at the structure of the spine. And of all these little things to have you have a look at when things go wrong. And I brought this along because again, the likelihood in restorative yoga, you will have people coming to you with things going wrong because they may be coming because they're not fit to go to a regular class. That's one of the reasons. So you need to know something of what goes wrong in the spine and all of that. So my guide in the postures is going to just cherry pick out John's manual. So when I tell you to do page whatever, you will get your own props. And I will watch you set it up from his manual. So I think that's the best way, rather than introduce if I bring in different yoga poses. That's not kind of where you're at the minute. So we pick the yoga poses. There's a good enough selection here when we go to that. So if I said to you then, what is restorative yoga, or even further, what is yoga? If someone just threw that at you at any given time, how would you answer it? Would you go on to a spin? What is yoga? Union of what?
Body and soul. Mind, body, spirit.
Yeah, and keep it even more simple. Yoga just is a connection, it's the union, it's the pulling together of the dimensions of our physical, our mental, and our emotions. The mind, the body, and the breath coming together. The mind and the body coming together via the breath. And there's no yoga if there's no breath. There's no focus on breath. It's not yoga, it's exercise. That connecting in, the yoking of the body with the mind and the breath. And then restorative yoga, how would you define that? What makes it restorative? What is restored? Go back to the root word, to restore something.
Yes.
To restore something, if something had an old piece of furniture, to restore it would be to bring it back to its original form. So that's kind of what you're doing. We've all stressed out. Your restorative yoga is to bring you back into your body, to experience the body in stillness, relaxing. I mean, if you narrow it down, restorative yoga is to teach you how to relax, basically. And you see, restorative yoga is all of these bits that we left out to look at. They're all in the general package. It should be. Restorative yoga and a general yoga practice is asana. You need to rest at the end of your practice. And there's a lot of places. I was in Australia and my daughter took me to a yoga class and she says, well, it's not really a yoga class, ma'am, it's a mixture. Will you see what happens at the end? And I said, what? Relaxation, half the class, women, young women roll up their mats and left. They haven't time for that. They only wanted to be doing hard stuff, big stretch. And I'm looking at them thinking, are you mental? Do you know what it's about at all? That's the bit that makes sense of the others. The others were getting you ready for this. And in our world, why we restorative yoga being left out that you're now doing a training in it, is that we do not know how to rest. We sit down at night, we watch TV, but it has to be highly stimulated. The hardest thing for anybody to ask anyone is to sit alone in a room by themselves and do that. Oh man, can't do it. So restorative yoga has so much to offer to everyone, but it's how you present it. And again, that's the skill of what you're doing, how to present it to engage people. So we find out that everyone loves Shavasana at the end of the yoga class, so there's a whole other experience to give people who may not be coming to classes or people who are stressed out, which is everybody. Teach them how to rest. So really restoring is that, relaxing, renewing, and there's no stretching in it. It's all propped. You don't have to stretch. There is no stretching. There's no guidance for stretching. There's guidance for positioning, and everything is propped. So you're in the postures. There's great opening. You're putting the body into open positions, but you're propping them and holding them. So there's no effort, and the body can learn to relax and to rest. So the key principle is staying in poses longer without effort, pain, or strain while using props for support and comfort. Would you say that defines it well? And that's what it's about. So lots of props, you can hold the poses for longer, involves all the body systems because it'll involve your breathing, it'll involve your heart rate, it'll involve your nervous system. All the body systems will be addressed in the poses. And today we're not looking at all the body systems, we're looking at the musculoskeletal, we're looking at the spine. And the spine will be put into a forward bend, a back bend, a side bend, a twist, and posture position. And then, that's what I would like to advise you to. Where is the breath in all of those positions? That's where you go to in the silence and in the stillness. The guidance for breathing. For example, if you're in a forward bend, where is the breath moving in the lungs? In your back. So there, don't be giving them breathing for 4 hold for 20 minutes. Don't be doing that. Don't be stressed them out, but get them to breathe into their back. And then get language around it. Your back will expand as you breathe. And then as you exhale, just let it go. You may not feel anything, but put your attention there. Because where your mind goes, energy goes. And back bends, where will the breath be? Inside bends. So as part of yoga as well, that you learn to direct your breath, to send, and your breath will always automatically go to the area of least resistance. So if you've opened up this side, it's easier to breathe here. Open up this side, easier to breathe here. Twisting, the breath is lighter. It's breathing diaphragmatically from sides and back of the ribcage. That's the direction for the spine twist. So there's lots of material to give direction to breathing without getting caught into, do I tell them to breathe in for 4 hold for 10 and breathe out for 11. That would be too big a leap, but lots of guidance around where the breath is moving. So again, as I said, I'm here just to talk about, I hope it's a recap for you now, just the structure of this. When you look at your spinal column, if you look at it from the back, it looks straight. But when you look at it from the side, it is curved. And this is color coded, so it helps us to look at the sections of the spine. So we will start down at the base, the sacral part is the bit of the remnant of our tails. And then there's the lumbar that curves inwards. And then there's thoracic that curves outwards. And then there's the cervical and the neck that again curves inwards. Now the 3 structures I spoke about, the pelvic bowl defines the foundation. If that's not, it's like a house, if that's not upright and level, then your spine is going to be knocked out of kilter. So it's really important, no matter what posture you're teaching, that you start with foundation, which is your feet, whatever part's touching the ground, but it's the bowl of the pelvis. And the core muscles keep that bowl upright. So that's your first structure, and the position of that determines the curve of the lumbar. Because if that bone tilts forward, it will be too much curve, and if that bone tilts back, we begin to lose the curve. So you need to have that neutral position. You know all this, we're just going over what you've been doing in teacher training course. So the next structure then is here, and that's the rib cage. The thoracic spine carries the rib cage, so that positions itself directly over the bone propellus. And then the head is balanced on the neck, and that's positioned over the rib cage over. And a curved structure bears weight much more efficiently than a straight rod. Now I say that as if I'm an engineer, but seemingly that's a fact. A curved structure bears weight more efficiently than a straight rod. So to maintain the curves of your spine is the life's journey. We call it good posture. If it's all people learned in a yoga class, it would be magnificent. Why? Keep asking why. Because there'll be less wear and tear on the spine and less wear and tear on the joints of our body if we move through life with our structure more better position. So, still with me? We're going to look now at the bones of the spine, because that's important, because that's where some of the problems that you might meet will arise. The bones of your spine are called vertebrae. So if you look at this, the neck ones are quite thin. This is the front now, the front of it. And then as they go down, they get thicker, because the lumbar vertebra is carrying the whole weight of the body. So they are thicker, the body is thicker. And this bit is called the body, like the cotton reed thread. And here they are again. So here's the perfect one. So you have the body, and then you have all these sticky out bits at the back called processes. Spinous process is this one here, and these side ones are the transverse ones, and they're just for attachments for muscles and ligaments and all, but they're at the back of the spine. So the front is here, and this is like the fish, you know, we can feed it down our own backs, all those processes. And then we see that the bones are separated by what's like a washer, and this is the spinal disc. So the disc is like a tire in a way, if you can. If you look at it here, you can see all these threads. So this is really the outer coating. It's like hard plastic basically, and it's very fibrous and it's tough. But this bit here, it's not yellow on the body, but it is fluid filled capsule inside the spinal disc that makes it like your tire in your car. It clumps up this area, which altogether makes the spine so much longer because of these discs. And these discs are separating the bones. Now, when we're young and fit and active, these discs are spongy and we move well. But as we get older, they begin to dry out because they are fluid filled. Movement keeps the fluid, because the fluid goes in and out through squishing and releasing. It's a kind of an osmosis. So all the movement of the yoga that you do benefits the discs by keeping the fluid. And if you're a long distance driver, and I've said this before in another class, you would know that when you're finished your driving at the end of the day, that you have altered your mirror because you have become shorter. And when you step in the morning again, you have to alter your mirror because you're a bit taller. Because when you lie down, the fluid goes back into the discs. Another reason that restorative yoga will be very, very beneficial, because it will help to keep hydrating these discs. Movement does it. Aging begins to take the fluid out, and then degeneration, I'm going to show some here, when wear and tear hits in, and that process, they start to narrow, and your bones start to get a bit deformed. This is called degenerative disc disease. So you're now, and all these bones here are not just the lovely shape they were, but to notice here, the discs are getting squashed, and when that happens, the bone starts to move closer to the bone. And when that happens, bone tries to repair itself by growing more bone. And that's another problem, because you have bone and bone, and then you will have inflammation and you will have pain. So that's the degeneration. Now, the practice of yoga, even again, restorative yoga, you are putting people into positions of length. You are putting people into positions of the same movement of the spine that you will do in a yoga class, that's going to create length in the muscles to help relieve this problem that will be happening as bone degenerates. Muscles can be lengthened and strengthened to help keep the space, to help keep that lifted. So the disc is part of the joints of the spine, but then there's more joints to the back, and these are called facet joints. Every one has two above and two below, and they're synovial joints. Synovial joints, as every movable joint in your body is called a synovial joint because they have this lubricant, this fluid called synovium that keeps the joint mobile. So all those little joints along the back of your spine are freely movable joints. They're all strung together in the whole spinal movement, but each of them has a little capsule, and inside it there's cartilage at the bone ends, there's fluid that keeps it lubricant, and the more you move, the more blood is moved, and the blood warms this fluid, and that's your lubricant. That's why movement is so essential for conditions like arthritis. Arthritis is a disease of the joint where the fluid is drying out and where the cartilage is wearing away and the bone is rubbing on the bone and your joints, and that causes inflammation and pain. That happens in all of those little joints in your back as well. Has a potential to happen. Why am I telling you this? Because you may meet this and people will be in pain. Now again, restorative yoga is one of the great things you can offer people to combat arthritic pain. So that's another reason for doing it. Because when you put people into a position of openness and they're in pain, well, as well as the pain, you can be sure that there's so much muscular tension around the area of pain. The muscles are just waiting for more pain, so they're tightening. So when you put people in a position of openness and supported, and they can relax, then that muscle action begins to release. The tension begins to release, so the pain is not so bad. So restorative yoga will be very good for arthritic pain, because you're not asking them to move, you're asking them to be opened in a position of comfort and support, and that's good for pain. Now the other thing, so we've gone through all the joints there. Now the little spaces between the sides are for these yellow things, which are nerves. So the nerves are coming all out of the side, because down the center of the canal of the spine is the spinal cord. And then the spinal cord, all the nerves come out to innervate the whole body. And that's coming from the prime directive. It's coming from the brain. Okay, so innervation of the whole body comes from the brain via the spinal cord, and then the nerves all come out here. By telling you this, there's another happening that you'll meet. You see here this little red blob. Can you see that little red blob down in the lumbar? And we will see it here too. Have a look at these afterwards if you want. This is a herniated disc. Remember I said that the tough coating here was like the tires of your car, but the bit in the middle is fluid. It's like a ball bearing. Now, when this starts to dry out, it can crack. Remember hard plastic, it can wear. So if there's any kind of disturbance, this fluid stuff starts to push its way out. So that would be called a bulging disc. And then if it splits all together, if your tire splits, then the fluid comes out like toothpaste. And as we see, there's not much space for these nerves. So when that hits on a nerve, you see it here, if that hits on a nerve, you will get excruciating pain. And normally it's down here in the lumbar, because that's where the weight bearing is. Now, every one of us sitting here could have a herniated disc, but we may not have pain because it's just not touching the nerve. It's only a problem when it hits the nerve. But that's not true, but it only gives you pain. That's a problem, of course, why it happens. You can do something about that, prevention. But everyone over a certain age probably has that condition, but it's only when it hits off the sciatic nerve there and you will get that excruciating pain.
Been there and done that, and it's
Pregnancy can do it as well. Not fun. Not fun.
I would rather the food table again.
Yes, nerve pain is not fun. So again, I'm labeling that and telling you that you understand. You call it slip disc. The disc doesn't slip. It's impossible for that to slip. What slips out is the bit in the middle. The fluid like toothpaste, you can't push it back in again. So in your body, what happens over time, your body probably reabsorbs that material. Or if it is a real problem that isn't getting better, well, you would have surgery and they take that material away because that material is pressing on there and causing pain. So that's a problem, and that can be a younger age problem as well, actually, because it's usually in the 40s and 50s, and men a lot of the time heavy lifting can get, women can have it from pregnancy, and again can have it from lifting. But as you get older, that tends not to be the problem, but the problem then becomes arthritis. That's the problem of older age, arthritis in the spine. And then of older age still, or for different reasons, there is another problem. That's the herniated. This one here, if I got you the perfect, can you see the difference in height? So this would be osteoporosis. This would be the bone becoming brittle and collapsing in on itself, and people getting small. So again, when that happens, it tends to go along with the degenerative disc disease because everything is collapsing. So they would also have pain of arthritis as well as osteoporosis. But that is osteoporosis. It's the degeneration of the bone, and that affects everything, your posture, your breathing and time, all of that. So those are some of the more common conditions that you might meet. And again, people coming to maybe a restorative yoga class because they're in pain for some of those conditions, and a class where they're not asked to move might be the class that they choose. But for you to understand those conditions. Any questions?
Yes, I have a question. I have someone with a spinal fusion.
You have someone with a spinal fusion.
Yeah.
That, and did they say why they got it? Did they have herniated discs?
No, they let me know. They said they photograph all it.
Lovely.
But they are aware of their range of movement and what they can do exercise and really unique all the time. That's like, I don't know. But no, they manage quite well, but because it's a guy, so constantly, but you can see that he tries to push himself.
Yeah.
But
Usually a fusion is for something like a herniated disc or a problem with that be fused. So they would just fuse the two of those together. And then that's grand, your pain magically is taken away. But that's not the end of the issue, because then you've got something that's held tight. So above the next vertebra up, they need to constantly keep moving their bodies. They need to be exercising. Again, if they go into being a couch potato and all of that and do nothing, and they think that they've got the pain sorted out, that may not be the case. But handy enough to manage in yoga, that's just not overdoing, basically, because they do need to work it. They need to do forward bends, back bends, all of those things. But not into a pain, anything near pain. And they themselves will be the judge of that. Normally, people who come through things like that have a good awareness of their own bodies. For you, maybe, but yeah, you just tell them to stay comfortable, and you're not going to do any dramatic back bends or forward bends. In fact, forward bends would be worse in those situations. Forward bends the worst because it's overstretch.
My stepmother is she's 75, but she's arthritis in her spine.
Yeah.
So she went to physio there the other day, and she gave her a few exercises to do, but one of them was seated and doing a forward bend, and she had to do like 6 reps of it. But as soon, like, and then she'd be one of these people that she pushed through a clean barrier. She had knee replacement, she done more damage, kind of pushing through. Do you know what I mean? Because the physio said I had to do it. You know, so I was in there while telling off yesterday, because she said I can just be like almost like as if they're bone on bone and they're lower.
Yeah.
So there probably is there?
Well, you see, again, I suppose the physio give her seated forward bends too.
I told her, I just said, just don't do it, just stop doing it, like, why would you?
Seated forward bends would be the hardest. I mean, you can get your forward bend, as you've been yoga teachers know, you can get forward bends differently. I mean, for her, if she was coming to me as a yoga therapist, I would have her on her back doing the knee bends.
She had them too as well, pulling the knees
Yeah,
in.
I would seated forward bends. I would keep
Oh,
that
I
weight
see.
on the line, and especially repetitions of them, because there's nowhere to go, only the stretch when you're grounded. So again, that can be just a wee bit too much. Whereas if you're on your back or even a standing forward bend against the wall, forward bend down, which you're tilting from the hips, that's all very well because you can move freely in space. If you're pinned to the ground and you're doing Paschimottanasana, which is basically, that is.
Well, that's
too
what I
much.
said, that's, I wouldn't do
That to
even,
me,
I don't know.
but you know, I'm not putting anybody straight down, but you know, as a yoga therapist, I would often have people come and what does the physio do and they do this, I would say, yeah, well, I'll be doing the same thing, but not to that degree. That to me is a bit too hard, but there's a journey before that and people's vulnerabilities.
She couldn't walk, she was in so much pain,
That's-
and the
that's
next
too
day,
much.
What was it she had?
she's arthritis and her spine.
Whereas range of movement is where the physio is coming from. That's what I'm telling you as a yoga teacher. Range of movement is where you're coming from. But where do you start with the range of movement? Where do you present it first? Where do you move it to? Seated forward bends and seated twists are very, very hard for a vulnerability in the back. But you can do standing forward bend. You can do standing twists. You can do floor twists and forward bends, and they're much kinder.
So I was thinking about, I wanted to ask you that today about maybe starting to do a wee bit of restorative movement.
Yes,
I'm not
yes,
really
and restorative,
the
yeah.
best one.
Yes. Because restorative yoga is now you putting your foot into that world of yoga, that's yoga as therapy. Because that again is what restorative yoga is. It's kind of using the tools of yoga in a therapeutic way. So there's no stretching, she's not going to hurt herself, but you can position her into a forward bend where she's comfortable and she's staying. So if it was a forward bend, like you just in the jaws, forward bend, there he's one just from chair to chair, and he's one that is supposed to child one, but that might be a bit much, but just that one that he was doing, she's sitting on a chair and she's leaning over onto another chair and she's staying there, comfortably stretching her lower spine. So seated, he's on a chair there, but he's only coming out to there, but sitting on the floor and going in and out like Paschimottanasana is way, way too much. And the repetition too. In yoga, you don't repeat things. You might repeat them once or twice. It's the holding is the essence of the yoga practice. And the holding is the essence of the restorative, where there's no stretching at all. It should be wonderful with restorative yoga.
I had a lady come to me and she had pilot disc problems and she hasn't come back. She came to my beginners class and she was like, I can't even lie on the mat. And she just sat up with pillows around her. But I'm just thinking, if she came to my restorative class, I would be so anxious to think, because she was so anxious about doing damage to her spine that I was thinking, if she came to my yoga restorative class, I'd be scared to put her in a twist or anything. Like I just said to her, like, you know your own pain, you just do what's in your comfort zone. But then I was thinking, if she showed up in my restorative class, I would be nervous. To know, is this okay? Like, do you know what I mean?
Well, you know, somebody's like that's in an awful lot of pain and they're not. That's nearly where you would need to work with first with her on her own. So what is your range of movement? What can we do here? And then you might be surprised that she might be able to be comfortable and maybe all of those range of movement. And if she can, then she will be able to step in to the class. But sometimes like that, the class hasn't the time for you to give to her as much as maybe she needs because you're teaching the class. Yeah.
She was okay at that point, but she was so scared that she got much spinal stuff going on, that she was so nervous, like her anxiety, even doing anything was just so heightened. She was probably holding herself, so you know what I mean? But, she was saying, I'm just so scared if I do anything here, it's going to hurt me. You know, and then I'm just thinking in my head, if she showed up, because she's somebody that probably would benefit from restorative, but if she showed up to my class, I would be like, oh, is this all right to do this with her? Because she's so
Well, you
You know what I
see, you see the other thing, and I'm coming again now from the background of a yoga therapist where I would work on a one-to-one with people and I train yoga teachers to become therapists. And the number one thing I said to them, you are not the fixer. When you work with somebody, the two of you are working together. The expert is her, not you. She's the expert and she knows what's causing her pain. So the two of you together finding out, is that okay? Is that not okay? Finding the level where she trusts you and you begin to understand her and she begins to trust her own body. It's a slow process. But you may find on a one-to-one like that she may, with the props, find comfort in, and again, if you met her on a one-to-one, what would you be doing with her? Range of motion.
And see,
You're trying to see with as much propping as you can give her. Can she bend forward to some degree? Can she bend back to some degree? Can she do this to some degree? Because she still has to live in this body. She still has to move. And if she's walking around in daily life doing things, she is actually doing those movements to some degree. But sometimes when she walks into a class like that, it's not the space because you haven't that time to devote to one person. But it might just be one meeting to see where she's at. So that's always a potential. Anything else on the anatomy front? Now I have a wee handout for you, and what it is really, I'm going to give it to you tomorrow because it's just the conditions that you would meet, because there's a few rare ones, and why I have them in is because John has them in this manual for you to avoid. But if you don't know what they are, and I don't know whether he explains them. For one, there is the spondylolysis.
Oh, God, it's
So what do you see? Where's he? And he's in this book. So if it's in this book, I decided we better know what it is. So the first one there, if you pass it around, you can have a look at them. We looked at the herniated discs, the remodel of the herniated disc is where the nucleus of the disc bulges out from the outer casing. And as I said, it tends to be, I suppose, in a way, a younger person's complaint that happens in the years maybe 40, 50. But as you start to dry out, that same complaint takes on. Sorry to cut it some people, that's what's happening. We're drying out. So if you have a herniated disc and it's bothering you, you probably have an age profile there. Osteoarthritis, you would all know that is the common one. It's the most common type of arthritis. It occurs when the cartilage that covers the ends of bones wears down. Aging is the most common risk factor. Now that can happen to young people through injury, footballers, things like that. They can get an injury and then a couple of years later, that joint can become arthritic because of the injury. But by and large, again, it's the beauty of aging, it's an aging risk factor. Now, on that point, I would like to make the point that you go and the doctor would say that's a wear and tear condition. What does that mean? Wear and tear, living in the body, but living in the body that may not be aligned. That's what I would say to you. The only thing people came away from yoga with was how to have good posture, how to stack your body, how to sit with that awareness, how to walk, how to stack those 3 cages. There would be less wear and tear on the joints and on the discs because you would be better aligned. So yoga in its very essence is in a way pro-aging. It's not that you're not aging through yoga, but you're not aging as quickly or wearing your joints and your discs down because you may have better positioning of your body, better posture, and then all the movements of yoga. That's what they're all for. Lower bend to back, bend to side, and all the movements to bring you back to neutral. So that when you're in neutral, you are balanced. So how do you get to balance? You move. You move through all the movements, and then when you stand upright, you're balanced. That's why in restorative yoga, you need alignment poses as well as forward bends, back bends, and all the other poses that you're doing. So you think of what's an alignment pose in the restorative yoga, because that's where we're going to start when we get to that. So I think that the very fact that anyone does any type of yoga, restorative or any type of yoga, is going to teach them good posture, it's going to teach them alignment, and that's going to help with the wear and tear of just living in the body. Degenerative disc disease caused by wear and tear of the spinal disc. It is an aging disease causing the disc to become more rigid and flat, and this can cause pain and stiffness. Yoga is invaluable to maintain flow of water and blood flow in and out of the discs. Yoga helps keep suppleness in the spinal column and the discs. You know that statement, I'm sure you've heard it, you're as young as your spine is flexible. Old age happens when the spine stiffens. Is that not true? So to keep your spine flexible and to do that at any age is invaluable to the health of the bones and the discs of the spine. Staying upright, look at older people, staying upright doesn't always happen, but the whole sad thing about it, there's no awareness that it's not happening. People are not aware that they're losing, but you are aware. And I always say when I be training yoga teachers, or even not even teachers, students in my class, have you started noticing people around you's posture? Because we all start to fix everybody else. We can see somebody with their shoulder up, or we can see somebody with their head forward. That's brilliant, because once you start to develop an awareness, the minute you see that in the other, what do? You self-correct immediately. So awareness is everything. If that was too the only thing you taught somebody coming to your class, to be aware of good posture and how to create it. And then comes the mobility and the stretching and all that follows. But no more than the breathing, take it back to the basics. Because we're entering a time now in the yoga world, and when I started yoga first 100 years ago, I'm really 150. Very good for me. When I started, it was all about making shapes. It was, and you were so impressed if somebody could tie themselves up in knots. You didn't look whether their knee was hyperextending or their back was hyperextending. You just, isn't she great? She can make such a shape. So that was a whole learning of, do you know what it was? It was Eastern yoga, and then it met Western anatomy. I'm thinking that actually might not be that good. And the hardest people to work with in classes are the hypermobile students, because they are pushing it and they are pushing it, unless they have the awareness that they are hypermobile and they're training themselves to be stronger rather than go into to indulge the stretching. So how did we get to that? We were talking about movement and the value of yoga helping us with suppleness. But again, that needs to be balanced with understanding. That is just not about making the shape, because some of these are contortion shapes, as you well know. But the skill of you, that's where I was going with it. Everything in the yoga world has a hype time, and that was a hype time way back yonder. And as I moved through the years that I have been practicing and teaching yoga, I've seen lots of fashion and things go, and everything in yoga too. A few years ago, it was all about fashion. Everything was about fashion. Muscles were no longer in. It was all about fashion. It was true, you know. As I say, how you do anything is how you do everything. At the moment now, it's about inclusive. It's about presenting yoga that's inclusive of race, color, shape, size, ability. Oh, if you look at the yoga magazines, I will tell you, it's all about when you see black people on the covers, you'll see fat people on the covers that you never would have seen before. So now it's all about inclusivity. But really, it should always have been about inclusivity, and that's where you're at, making it more available.
No, I find that as a teacher, just because you're a bit thinner out and you get someone who's maybe not going, I couldn't do that, I'm not your doll, I couldn't go there and have a class, people looking at me in my size, and nobody's looking at that. You know, it's, you say, the fact that world out there portrayed yoga, that it was all these things. Felt people that could do it.
And that again is where the yoga has been lifted out, like the restorative yoga, that's people that chair yoga. You know, the yoga now, which is always, when my training is called, I've been in therapy for 20 years, doing yoga as therapy, where the yoga has to change. You can't just impose shapes on the individuals. Okay, you challenge yourself to go further into these end shapes, but when you meet people that are not ever going to be able to do that because of their bone structure, because of their injury, because of their health condition, then the yoga has to change. So that's what you're doing in restorative yoga. You're lifting the whole stretching concept out of it. You're presenting postures that are supported, and there's no stretching asked. So that is kind of a new age thinking as well. And what you're doing is trying to get more people doing yoga, basically, and presenting it in different formats. And it doesn't mean that there shouldn't be a class that's all about strength and movement and all of that. And people that are able for it is wonderful. It's not denying that. But a lot of time, I've taught mixed ability classes, and you're thinking, oh God, they're not able for that. So then you have to tone it down to be inclusive. And that mixed ability class is very, very difficult to teach. Most classes are probably mixed ability. That's what you're kind of getting. But now there are options. It's like for your friend. If you're not able for that class, then there's another class. Okay, so that was just the degenerative disc disease. All of these are aging diseases anyway. The other ones may not be. Osteoporosis. And people are living longer, and they are living well longer, and they're fit. I mean, you pass no remarks now if someone's 85 in the yoga class.
Oh, no, I'm 83. You
You pass no remarks. You pass no remarks. It's common. So osteoporosis is a disease that causes bones to become weak and brittle. It is an aging disease and occurs from the creation of new bone doesn't keep up with the loss of old bone. Because that's the way bone works. When you're younger, the building up of bone and the breaking down of bone happens. And when you're younger, the building up is happening so much quicker. And when you get older, the breaking down is happening so much quicker. And the building up is not happening so much. And that's aging. So with medications, healthy diet, and weight-bearing exercises, we can help prevent bone loss and strengthen already weak bones. Restorative yoga can help with alignment and range of motion and supportive poses. But for people with osteoporosis to really want to work with their osteoporosis, they need to do weight bearing. That's why walking is advised for them. But yoga you can design classes for those people too. Whether it's weight bearing, can be done on the ground, can be done on a chair, can be done standing. So that can be addressed too, but it might be a specialist class again. But that's what's happening. These are complaints of aging. But what I'm saying to you, by doing yoga, by presenting yoga to people, these can be slowed down. And around that whole osteoporosis thing about building bone strength, the muscle strength also when you do yoga, the muscles support the bones. So both of those actions coming together. And lots of women have osteopenia quite young. It's just the other thing. We're all testing everything. I promised that I would have the DEXA scan done when I was 50, and I didn't have it done when I was 50. Promised I would have it done when I was 60, and I didn't have it done when I was 60, and I'm now nearly 70, and I still didn't have it done. So sometimes don't ask the question. I just do the yoga. Because when you're told you have, I have young women coming to me and say, osteopenia. Let me know, every person has they ask the question. You were sent for whatever reason. Of your age, every other person, like in their late 40s, has osteopenia. It's just saying that your bone is starting to age. But it throws them into a stone.
Yeah, then mentally your mind just thinks that's
You see the negative, and then you get all protective of, I can't move, I might do some damage. So, I'm not saying not to go and get things tested out. That's not what I'm saying at all. And I should have all them out. That's just a mission of mine. What would I do? More of what I'm doing. Yeah, basically. Now, medications are really, really good if people do have severe osteoporosis, because firstly, why are medications given? We must understand first where the medics are coming from. They have to prevent fractures, because they can't have a hospital for a lot of people with broken bones. So the medication prevents fractures, it really does. But what the medication does is interesting, because the medication doesn't strengthen your bones, it hardens your bones. Now, what it does is very interesting. Now, and I'm a great believer in the medication because the result of pain and dysfunction in especially women that are older with serious osteoporosis will need medication. But that process of the bone building up and the bone breaking down, what the medication a lot of the time does, it takes away the breaking down bone bit. So it just leaves the building up. But you can't really do that in the body even without something happening. What happens all of it? So if they stay on those, and some of you might have parents or mothers that will be on these biophosphonates, and they're brilliant, but you only can stay on them for a certain amount of time, because the result of doing that is a spontaneous fracture.
Is that one you take once a week?
There's a different types of them. Yeah, they're strong drugs, and you have to sit up taking them. Yeah. But they do the job of preventing fractures.
Yeah.
And you stay on them for a period of time. Because I had my mother-in-law was 94 when she died. She fell all the time. She never broke anything. Her bones, I'd say, were as hard as iron. But sometimes, and she only could stay on the drugs for a certain amount of time. But around that, and there's a great guy, doctor in America, great believer in yoga for osteoporosis. And I would have done his course, and I would have presented his course in Dublin. And he talks of medications and the value of them. But then alongside him talks of value of yoga. It's free, there's no side effects. And it really, but you have to do it in a particular way. He did the trials of so many people who did yoga for osteoporosis, but they had to do weight-bearing yoga. And it wasn't mad strong stuff, but it would be maybe warriors with holding onto a chair, but you'd have to hold the pose for maybe 90 seconds or whatever. You'd have to do weight bearing, and you have to do it every day. And he did his trials, and over 2 years, he did it from, say, people in their 50s up until people in their 90s. And over the period of time, nobody lost bone. Not everybody gained bone. And a lot of people stayed as they were. So you could say, well, it was much ado about nothing. But, you know, the numbers between, say, osteopenia and osteoporosis are only small. So he had people that had osteoporosis, but went back to having osteopenia. Can you imagine the empowerment of that? And some people had osteopenia and went back to, what do you go back to? You now have the bones of a 30-year-old. So that's very empowering. And that was his kind of small test that he did using yoga for osteoporosis. But again, I mean, to go all fired up with to your 90-year-old mother and saying that you're going to fix your osteoporosis with yoga would be just silly. You know, it's not just used like that. You know, but it is interesting for yourselves in using yoga as we get older and age. Now, can we just look at these other ones, because these are some of the ones that are from the manual. So those are the ordinary ones that you would meet on a day-to-day basis, and you probably will meet in restorative yoga. Scoliosis, you would know what that is, yes. A sideways curvature of the spine, and most often is diagnosed mental illness. Yoga is helpful to combine flexibility with core stability to create better alignment. Stretching the compressed side and strengthening the overstretched side. So again, there'll be some things. Restorative yoga would be useful if somebody came, because you would get the best alignment with your props and all of the spine movements. Now, spondylosis, the Greek word for spine, and a lot of times these terms are used. Spondyle is the Greek word for spine. So spondylosis is an umbrella term description for the degenerative disc disease. So somebody might say to you there's spondylosis, and that just means they have arthritis and they have disc issues. They're all over. Spondylitis is due to the inflammation that causes arthritis. So spondylitis is the same as having arthritis in your spine. Anything with itis is inflammation, and that's arthritis, inflammation. So these are the ones that I wanted to just, because they were in the manual. Spondylosis is a stress fracture in a vertebra, and I didn't have a model for that, but you can pass that around. This is something that can happen genetically. You can really look at it as I speak to this. Spondylosis is a stress fracture in a vertebra, commonly in the lumbar vertebra between the upper and lower facet. So it's back here between these facet joints. And it's usually, it could be there from birth where cartilage doesn't become bone and there's a weakness. And then you have an adolescent that's out playing sport and things like that, and that breaks. Now the breaking itself will do nothing about that, but spondylosis is a stress fracture in the vertebra. You probably would meet somebody who says that they have spondylolisthesis, and what that is, it follows on from that stress fracture when the vertebra slips forward. Because the fractures happen, there's nothing to hold the vertebra, and it slips forward off the other one. And that's what I have in that picture there, just to show you. So you can have a young person with that, and they're complaining of backache. There's degrees of it, there's 4 stages there. You would treat that again, like any of the other herniated discs. You would treat it with care and where they were comfortable to move. The only difference is somebody with a herniated disc, forward bending is problematic because it's pressing into the herniation. In this complaint, back bending is problematic because this is shifting forward, and that would tend to be overarching the lumbar. So they would avoid back bendings if they have that condition.
Oh, no, see, you're like the herniated disc there. I've been through that myself, and I know it's not pleasant. I didn't know for years until I came here that I had a twist in my spine.
Yeah, twisting your spine.
So what did the deterioration of my twist in my spine and my whole body go for a lot of years, way out of line for her, and then I was like, oh, I can line.
Right. So did you have as I said, a touch of scoliosis?
This is what I don't know.
Because I often say that when I'm training for my teachers too. There's a very common test that when you ask somebody to do a forward bend, say like downward facing dog, you could look in your class and you could see somebody's spine kind of
I don't think so.
deviated.
Patty's my physio, so maybe he would know Patty Morrison. So when John sent me to him, after I'd been to a chiropractor, I saw the X-ray, and you could see the literally. So I didn't know for years.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. If you could see, you could see that in class. Do you tell the person they have scoliosis? No, you don't, because half the world has scoliosis and they don't know it, and it's not even a problem. So it probably was only a problem maybe when it was noticed in yoga, but it's not doing you any.
Even that's what brought me to yoga.
My back was sore, was it?
After years, more years lying down off.
But you see, it's degree, scoliosis is a degree thing. As I said, a lot of people have scoliosis their lifetime won't even ever know they have it, and they might inadvertently find out because they might be complaining of something else. That not every spine grows perfectly straight, but with scoliosis, it can deviate a little, or it can deviate a lot.
It's just the chiropractor said it was a direct twist, so it made me always what was a direct twist thing, you know. And then obviously the disc eventually went, and the pelvis went out sick, and everything went, just everything fell apart at that time.
Now then there is what's called structural scoliosis, which means that that's the structure that your spine took, and probably that's why you're tested with adolescents, and kids are tested to see how they're, when they have growth spurts, to see how their spine is growing, because that's when it will be picked up. But then there's functional scoliosis, that you could have done something that it wasn't the structure of the bones that was the problem with your muscles. Like, for example, somebody carrying a handbag on one shoulder will end up like that. That's muscle that can be corrected. So a scoliosis that's functional can be corrected by exercise because it is muscular, but structure, it's in the very bone structure and not so easy. But what you still work with is your muscles to get the best alignment out of, and that's what your yoga will give you. And how are you now?
I have a lot of trouble with the obliques and the QALs and stuff.
Yeah.
I've had because of the scar tissue, it's getting that release. I would find restricted a bit, so I just have to take it easy and restorative. That's not reasonable.
What you do, that's the
easy.
same thing as I said earlier, whether it's something like that or whether it's something else that's preventing you from doing things in yoga. not everybody will look the same in a posture, not everybody will have the same ability in the posture. And for some of us, it's our bone structure, we have to suck it up, you're not going to ever be able to do that, so get over yourself.
You're great, Mama.
And again, it's taking it away from that word of we all have to be able to then be in the one shape in yoga, and that's not true. You know, for example, even proportion. You know, if you bring your hands over your head there, and you can't have space, then you shouldn't be doing a shoulder or a headstand. So just try it. That's proportion in people's arms. That most of us, we will be able to clear our head, but some people are not.
Yeah.
Because then they're not going to be able to be on their shoulders, they're going to be on their head, and that's not a good thing. So things like that are really important in yoga, and you can't create it. Just about it. Just about it.
It's obviously work.
Yeah. And that's proportion. The other thing too for a lot of people will be squatting, you know, that the length of your shin in comparison, but that's not always the reason, but you know, the proportion does. Or even sitting, do you know the pose where you just sit and you press your hands? You know, some people have long, their elbows are bent, so they're going to be able to lift themselves away from the floor. I can barely reach the floor. You're never going to be able to lift yourself away unless you put your hands on blocks. So those things are all important. Okay. So it's not about making the one shape. It's about understanding your own bodies. And that doesn't mean we just don't try. But when you understand, if you're like this one, Falconasana.
Oh, magnificent.
And somebody, I'm doing yoga for 30 odd years, 35 years, and some beginner strays into the class. And that's the shape of her joints, her hip joints, because everybody said joint. The ball and the socket does not sit exactly the same. Some of them are sitting more. So it's not even causing her a stretch to do that, or him a stretch, because and other people, it's not muscular. And the sad news is you're never going to be able to bring your knees to the floor. So again, just get over it.
Yeah, I had that conversation in class one night there during the week. Somebody with weaker, the session when you're young, like one was looking at it, and look, I've been doing this for 15 years, my knees are never going to.
Yes, it's not even causing her a stretch.
No.
So that's her bone structure, and that's just the reality.
Yeah, I know, I find that too. People say, I tell them my knees don't go down. I says, John always tells me it's in the post probably 15 years from now or ever. And then they're like, but I'm not. Again, this one lady, like, because she's always conscious about her weight, her legs fall to the floor instantly. I says, you're about like that, I'm about like this. I'm naturally stiff.
Yeah.
So that's just
No, it's not any amount of stretching is going to get you there. It's just that the ability of the ball to turn in the socket of the hip has now met its limit in your structure. Because your position is different from the other person. As I said, it's not even causing them to stretch. So that's the way. Okay, so what was the last one there? Just sciatica. You will meet that again. It's a pain that radiates along the path of the sciatic nerve from the lower back down the bottom, and that usually comes from the herniated disc. It can come from another source, which is called the piriformis, another muscle that crosses from your sacrum to your leg. You know the piriformis? Yeah. We used to say that one was caused by men sitting on fat walls. They don't do that anymore. Now, some plastic. But did you understand the logic? Anything that would irritate the bottom, that nerve passes down and is enough if you're sitting constantly on a bulge, that's not enough.
I call this out as Satan.
Pregnancy is the biggest
Satan, no, that is Satan. My sleep would curse like a sailor.
It's not pleasant.
Bob.
There's another one there called ankylosing spondylitis. You could meet that. Sometimes just tell me they have AS. It's an inflammatory arthritis that causes pain in the SI joints. Down here it starts. So low back pain is interesting. Pain that starts in the SI joints, travels along the spine, pain and stiffness. A lot of actually people, it's a genetic one as well. A lot of people have that. And women have it. Used to be considered a man's disease, but women have it too. It's in families.
Is that
Nowadays,
is that not an autoimmune disease? ASM.
a lot of these things could be, I'm not sure.
So I've had a few people come to my classes.
I know it's genetic and I don't know whether it's autoimmune, I'm not sure. But I had worked with a man that was really, when I met him, he was looking at the ground. And he made great progress in yoga because what happens then, the pain starts when you're quite young and then the stiffness follows, but then the pain goes away. The stiffness, the whole, you talk about the fusion, the whole spine fusion. So it's like it used to be called a walking stick because you're just like a walking stick. But he made great progress in yoga because it was muscle that we were really working with. But when I met him first, and you talk about being challenged, I mean, the first night when somebody comes in with something, you're very anxious not to kind of be insensitive to their condition and draw too much attention to it. So we was kind of joining in the class. But I decided we would do on our tummies and do cobra. Oh, should a poor man just did oh my God, what am I going to do? But that's where bolsters and things came in. He propped, he used a lot of props. He did really well. The sweat used to be rolling off. Now I don't teach strong class, anything like John would teach. My classes would be all nearly therapeutic. We would use kind of warriors and we would do strong work. But why I'm saying the sweat was rolling off him, the least amount of effort was 10 times the effort for him. But he did well, and I remember the day he came in and he looked straight at me. And I suddenly realized, God, you're not an old man, you're actually a young man. And he said his best achievement was that he could go to the beach and sit on the beach with his wife and daughter.
Oh,
Prior to that, he couldn't do that. So those were huge things. And he joined a choir and he sang. And his colour, it wasn't even you're a young man, I kind of thought to myself, it was the colour. So his breathing was better. But nowadays you tend not to get it to that degree because of medication and physio and all of that, and people kind of get diagnosed early. But yoga is good for it. It's good for stretching the muscles. And yeah, that was it. Now, if you had seen him in my class, you would say he still was very deformed because we did
the progress you've seen.
the progress that I saw. And that's the thing that's relative, isn't it? So just before we just go into the postures, restorative yoga needs to bring attention to alignment. Every yoga does, but restorative too, so that you're not too busy getting them into these shapes. That the first position is going to be an alignment position, and the last position would be alignment position.
Do you mean alignment of the spine?
Yes,
First and
yes.
last, you
Alignment of the spine.
in the first position.
And the last position. So Shavasana would always be the last position anyway. So the first one too, and let's see, John has it here, and I use it now. You'll be lying on your tummy. That one. You know that's the
Oh, I
one.
love that. I'm not sure.
So alignment. I wanted to say to be mindful of using support under the neck. Because what do you want from support under the neck? Yes, that's the important thing. So if it's too bulky, if there's too much bulk here and you're resting your neck on the bulk, the head needs to be either resting on, say you're lying down on the floor. Now some people do that and you get this. So you need to either support the head, or if you're supporting under the neck, it really should be like a thin towel rolled, because you don't want to hyperextend the neck. So you don't want your support to be so thick that you're now extending the neck. So you don't want to either hyperextend it or you don't want to flatten it. You want your natural curve. So the natural curve is not quite big, so sometimes that support needs to be just a small rolled up towel. But supporting the head is good as well, because when the head can stay either on a flat block is usually high enough that the chin comes down slightly, the natural curve is there. And then if you wanted to support that as well, it would be a very thin rolled towel. So it used to be always that the forward head was the problem, that we're all compressing the neck because we are like that, and that is still a problem. But nowadays, because of folds and the looking down, we are now ending up with a lot of times flat neck. So you may have to try to define the curve of your support. So be mindful of the support. So then the spine, full range of movement, that can be achieved in restored class, muscles be lengthened and strengthened passively. So the range of movement down the spine can be the guideline to enable you to choose a range of asana that's going to make up your class plan. Now we're just focusing on the spine, but that can go too for hips and shoulders. You know, you can do your range of motion of those as well. The other thing I touched on earlier, but really important, that joint pain, such as arthritic pain, can be relieved by the supportive approach of your yoga practice in restorative yoga. So people can release the tension that results from chronic holding. So arthritic pain, you should try that with your mum. But of course, you know the prophet is never appreciated. Be prepared for that too.
No, not my mother is I was a walking chemist, steroids and stuff, and that's the I thought I'm not doing that one.
Yeah.
Then my mum's at the point now, you just
I
didn't
know.
know something, yeah, and that's so sad.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny you should say that because I'm teaching a class in Dublin yoga therapy training for teachers and trying to get them to see that the role, what is the role of yoga therapy, and actually is complementary to Western medicine, because you're not doing that. You're offering what the medics are not offering. So the medics are diagnosing, they're treating, and most of that treatment is either going to be medication, or it's going to be surgery, or it's going to be that and that. So you're kind of working in the niche areas that the doctor hasn't time to be listening to all the aches and pains that someone's complaining about, maybe because of the medication. That's an area where yoga can enter, can really work with, again, movement patterns. So as a yoga therapist, you're not diagnosing anything. You're not actually curing anything, but healing can happen and pain can be relieved.
And the
Quality
better-
of life can be returned.
Prevention's
Empowerment
better.
can happen because people are taking back control, but that doesn't mean they're not taking their medication, that you're working alongside when you're doing something that the medics are not doing. And it's another area of their emotional response to illness, their mind states, and all of that. So yoga is very, very good complementary therapy, even if your mum is taking all those drugs. You know, if you can get her to go to a yoga class, you can get her to, you know, that's what I'm
I'm very
like.
happy to sit in the chair and live all the stuff and everything. I've come for everything. My mum would oversee what for everything.
There's so many like it.
That's
Having said that, the other thing that's about to explode, I would say, all these things that get enter somebody, and I know this looking around too. The other thing that's about to explode is charity. People are living so much longer. We're making yoga available. I do a Zoom class into a residential home in Killarney, and I only do it like for half an hour, and I didn't think a Zoom would work. And the average age, I'd say they're 90. And it was so funny because the first time that I did it, they all thought it was great. They all had a cup of tea and they watched me. Like, said to the care workers, you need to be with them. They have to do it. They thought this was great. Just watch her do this. But now they're doing it, and actually there's something better. And so yeah, you know, it's changing patterns. So anyway, chronic pain is another thing that yoga turns on the healing relaxation response, because that's what I'm saying to the girls, that you're not saying, I never say that you'll cure anything or anything will change because of what you're doing, but it might, but healing will happen. And sometimes you know what the healing is. A lot of the time when people come to yoga and their chronic illnesses and condition, you can see them becoming empowered. Maybe it's through breathing, maybe it's through positive intention, but you can see that they change their attitude to their illness. That's massive. That's massive. And they learn maybe then how to live. The other thing, and I suppose we've all learned that ourselves since COVID, that the big thing of going to the class is the social gathering. And we know the result of that when it's taken away. There's so much loss
Terrible.
and so much mental health issues because we need to be together. So again, there's an awful lot that you're offering in whatever yoga you're doing, but restorative yoga again, you're throwing the net a bit wider, you're inclusive, you are like encouraging more people to do it. So now I think maybe we will do it.
You two should all get a
I'm going to watch you do. So we're going to do a range of motion practice now. I have it written down. So we're going to start with alignment. So that's on your page 10. So what I'm going to do now, I am going to suggest the movements, and then I might throw in some conditions. And then you will choose, you're either going to do the back bend, say, without the condition, or you're going to do the back bend, it's motion, but the one with condition. But everyone's doing this one. It's your very first one. So I want to see you using your blocks. You can use your manual if you want to, but it's lying on your tummy. And instead of like everything else, I suppose, learning all what props to use, you just realize that whatever hits the ground has potential to be propped. So that's what you're doing, using blocks, using bolsters, using blankets. And the skill of doing it and the person's doing it is to make that happen as quickly as ease. So you're going to have the bolster for under your feet here, I think, and you're going to have 2 blocks for your shoulders. So this occurs, not all alignment poses are on your back, this one is on your front. And because it is, you can use the support under your head, you can turn your cheek from side to side, or you can support your forehead, the choice is yours. And you may want to just try both. So give yourself time to get into the pose. And then just ask yourself, as you settle, are your feet happy? And your shins. And then the pelvis. As I said, normally we would lie on our back for a posture pose, but here now the bone of the pelvis is still upright. You can feel the frontal hip bones on the floor. And then above that, your chest. Now you may need to wiggle around to get comfortable. You've taken the shoulders back and the blades are moving down your back. And your shoulders are resting on those blocks. And ask yourself, is that comfortable? The shoulders relaxed, the arms relaxed. And then it's important that you keep the head in line with the neck, and you can turn onto your cheek if that suits you, or you can support your forehead and keep the curve of your neck long. And now when you're settled in and comfortable, breathe in through your nose, sigh the breath out and drop your weight. Do that 3 times because you'll always find that there's tension when you do that. You're releasing more tension through that exhale. Now lying on your tummy, we sometimes forget too that there's more lung tissue in our backs than in our fronts. And I think this came about too with the whole cold thing, that if you were in the ICU, you would be in this position. They would be accessing your breathing better when you're lying in this position. So start to breathe into your back. Begin to feel the back of your waist rise gently as you inhale and as you breathe out again. All tension dropping from the front body into the ground. So you're trying to find space and softness in the back body. So fix your attention on your breath here. And just breathe, mindfully breathing as deep as you can. And you can still draw the tummy back to breathe out, because that encourages a deeper breath back in. The breath is moving in the back body. You feel it around the back of your waist, the back rising as you breathe in, And then you just gently pushing the breath out to your empty as you breathe out. Space and softness is now encouraged in the back. The release of tension, releasing from the chest, from the lungs, from the heart, from the stomach, from all the digestive internal organs, dropping tension into the earth. So the ground is active in all of these poses as you become inactive. Gravity, drawing you down, takes the tension and the holding from the body. But gravity also returns energy. So being on the ground is like an energy source, like plugging in your mobile phone. Just lying down is energizing. So the ground takes your tension and the ground delivers the energy. And the breath deepens and the back softens. And I want you to take 5 more breaths, just pushing the exhalation out and allowing a deeper inhalation back in. And each exhalation, you're dropping weight. Each inhalation, you're softly opening. Back of the heart open. Back body open. We often think of the back as the strong bit and the front as the soft bit. And we're now discovering we can soften and open the back. Breathe deep into the back of the lungs. Five breaths, slow and mindful. When you have completed your 5 rounds of breathing, you're going to think of coming out of this. Think it first, and then ask yourself, what do I need to do to come out of this? So start then to move off your supports, kicking away the bolster, using your hands, press yourself slowly up. And if it's comfortable for you to sit with a bolster between the legs when you come to sit, or to sit on your heels, just come up and sit. And then just take a moment to see how you feel. Now again, we normally finish with Shavasana on your backs, but you actually can do that relaxation on your front, which is a nice concept when you're lying on your back and you're dropping your weight into the ground. It's nice actually to turn people over and get that sensation the opposite way. So I'm just going to move now through the moves where I learned my training would have been different than John, and this is not set in stone, but it's the way I probably do teach. I would do a forward bend before a back bend, and I would do a back bend before a spinal twist. And then when I come out of, say, a spinal twist as an asymmetrical movement, I would do another symmetrical movement, which probably would be just either a forward bend or a knee hug. And that's the kind of way that I would forward bend, back bends before twists, and then a symmetrical movement to finish. So we're now going to do a forward bend, and the one I'm looking at in John's manual on page 14. So have a look at page 14. And the contraindications there. So some of you might decide to do this one for somebody that has knee issues and hip issues, and they're not able to move into that supported child one that he has done. And you might decide to do the one like we were saying for your mother on the chair. Here we have, like you might try that one out, and you might be your one choice. So you have a choice here to do your forward bend, presented either as pose of the child or one chair to another chair. And if there's no chair. So the first thing to ask yourself is, in a forward bend, what is the ask? Where is the bending happening? The crease of the base. So you're stabilizing the base, which is either sitting on the chair, or you're sitting on your seats on your heels, or you're sitting bolster. And then using the props to sit. So you're using the props for the whole spine, and then there's the head needs to be supported as well. And then what do you do with your arms? You can support them on the floor or on your, as I said, there's no right or wrong way. You make it comfortable. Some people might be able to go all the way down just holding on to a bolster. Other people will need that bolster to be raised up, maybe on blocks or another bolster. So you decide where you're pitching it. And again, the cheek to the side might be the most comfortable here. And check again when you're in it, and the people on the chair too. Check if the hands and the forearms are comfortable. Start now with your feet again. Are your feet comfortable? Your knees, your seat, your spine, your head, your arms, the whole body supported. You're bending forward from the crease of the hips. So forward bending are closing over movements. So by their very nature, they're bringing you internal focus. You're moving inward, you're folding, you're closing. And more than the previous one, the breath will be in the back of the body. So you're breathing into the back of the lungs. When you get tired, if you have your cheek to one side, then move it to the other. If you find that's not comfortable at all, you can still use another support for your forehead, but it might be hard to breathe. So deepen the breath into your back. Each exhalation, draw your tummy back like we did earlier to push the breath out further and to help you fold deeper. The folding's happening at the crease of the hips. You're not stretching anything, the whole body is supported. But the chest is spacious, and so is the back. And the breath now can move again into where there is space. And the space now is in the back of the lungs. So breathe deeply into your back. And breathing out, just push the breath out by drawing your tummy back and folding deeper. And see now, could you stay here for 5 slow, controlled breaths, feeling the movement of the breath in your back. Breathe in slowly and deeply. And each time you breathe out, see, can you empty the lungs of breath by drawing the navel to the spine, drawing the tummy back, push all the breath out, and direct the breath into your back. And as you extend the breath out further, the incoming breath will begin to come in deeper. Your breathing will slow, and it will steady, and it will deepen, and you will learn to direct it and feel it in the back of the body. And again, I'm going to say to you, when you have completed those 5 breaths, you start to come out of it. Bring yourself back slowly. With the least amount of disturbance, you probably can just push yourself all the way up again and you're still seated again. You might want to release the legs and maybe stretch the legs out in front. And you can still sit in your bolster if you want to do. So all I'm doing here is just taking you through the range of motion of the spine, and that's what we're doing. So that was the alignment pose, and that was your first pose then, and it was a forward bend. So after that, I'm just going to get you to come into a side bend and using your supports, and that is on page 12. Side bend on page 12. So that asks you now to use the bolster to get that body onto the bolster.
Sorry, Alma, what page was that on?
What page?
Yes, sorry. What page was it on?
Page 12, the side.
Thank you very much.
So the bolster this time is to open up. Slide. So you have a 90-degree angle. Let's do the right side first. We'll be on to the same side. So you're bending up your 90-degree angle. The thigh is close to the bolster. So the left leg then is bent, going back with your foot on a block or support. Now the arm that's resting, you have space for the arm to rest. And then the head is on another support. The arm now would reach over the head to come onto maybe a chair, but if somebody's shoulder was not able for that, the arm can stay by your side. Or you might be able to take the arm over your head onto a block. So once again, you build your pose using your supports. So take your time. And you can see what the aim here is to open up the top side. So there is opening upwards and you're not actively stretching, but that left side is open. You can feel the support of your bolster on the underneath side. So again, are your feet happy? Your knees? Your hips? It's a side bend, so is the part that's bending happy and is the part that's extending or opening happy? And the arm that's reaching over, is that also comfortable for you? And now again, take a breath into your nose and just sigh the breath out and just yield to the pose. You have nothing to do now. The position is an open position. The left side is open. So now the breath is going to move there. Remember, breath will move to where it can go, the least resistance. So start to direct your breath into the right lung. And breathing out, still draw the tummy back, your core muscles pushing against the diaphragm to empty you of breath, and then breathing in, directing, feeling the breath moving into the open lung. And each time you breathe out, you're sending the breath out a little further. So the incoming breath comes in a little deeper. So in a pose like this, the open side, the muscles between the ribs, they're opening. Those are your breathing muscles. So the pose and the breath meet here. The lungs inflate to the degree that the muscles that surround them are flexible. So from all of these poses, you will make the muscles that surround the lungs more flexible. So in a restorative class, you are working on the spine, you are working on muscle and bone, but you're also working on breathing. Your capacity will develop. More space to breathe. Breathing more efficiently. Push that breath out slowly. Direct the breath into the open side. Increasing lung capacity has a big knock-on effect because it will increase your energy. You're able to breathe more efficiently. Again, I want you to take 5 breaths here, directing the breath into that open side. When you have completed that, think about coming out. Think about it first. And then move as slowly and as efficiently as you can to come out of the pose. Pushing yourself back up slowly. And before we do the other side, just sit for a moment in whatever position that's comfortable. Just sit for a moment. And then just feel the 2 sides of the body, because there's no stretching there, but there's a lot of opening up and space is created, and breathing again will be enhanced. So we have to do the other side. So again, moving with the least amount of effort, knowing the props you need as you now come on to do the other side. So this is your left side. No, you're right. Which side? Are we all on one side? No? Okay, carry on.
Do your other leg.
So 90-degree bend of your knee, extending the other leg, using your block for the extended foot. Make yourself comfortably placed. And again, it's a side bend, so you're compressing that side against the poster or you open up the other side, supporting the head, supporting the arm, and reaching if it suits you. If it's too much, keep the arm down. And then once you're in the pose, have you done what the pose asks? It's a side bend. Can you feel that? One side is narrowed while the other side is spacious. Are you comfortable? Take a breath into your nose and sigh the breath out. Drop your weight. And then once again, begin to direct the breath moving to the place of least resistance, which is now that open side. So breathe into the open side. And breathing out, navel to spine, draw your core muscles back to send your breath out slower and direct the breath that's coming in. So you're filling into that open space. All of your attention now on gently directing your breathing. As you send each exhalation out slower and further, the incoming breath will come in slower and deeper. And each exhalation too, you are releasing over the support of the bolster. Steady breaths, directing them into the lung that's open, relaxed body, quiet, attentive mind. All the tension dropping into the ground that's actively drawing down. And the breath breathing. Relaxed, steady, quiet, focused. The mind is attentive, focused on the breath. And again, I want you to take 5 breaths here. Slow, gently controlled. Body is totally supported, totally relaxed. And the breath is coming and going, unrestricted. Space to breathe. When you've completed your 5 breaths, take a moment. And then again, as you come out of the pose, you unfold yourself. There's no jumping up. You come out slowly. Know what needs to move to bring yourself back to center. So we started with the alignment pose, we moved into a forward bend, we then went into the side bend. So the next movement is going to be a back bend. Just sit for a moment and think about that. Your back bend of choice, and I thought again, we would do a choice of 2. Page 22. And on page 24, if you look at page 24, you will see there in the contraindications, one of 2 of those issues that we looked at. Can you see why that pose might not be good for somebody with that condition? Because that condition, where there's a slippage of the vertebra, is increasing the lumbar arch. So you don't want to arch more. And in that pose on page 24, that would make the lumbar arch a lot, where you're putting a support under the thoracic spine. Can you see that? Yeah. So I want you to either do that one because there's no lumbar issues, and say you have people that there are lumbar issues, so I want you then to do a less challenging one of 22. Now on page 22, the bolster is used under the pelvis with the knees bent. See that picture? So that's a choice. Or with the legs outstretched. Now the one with the legs outstretched, that's difficult enough as well. So you can do one or the other there. So I want to see a range of either those two or the other one where the thoracic spine is supported, and some of you might choose to do that. That makes sense? So this is back bending, supporting the spine so the front of the body can open. So the support is under the sacrum, or if you're doing the other one, the support is in the middle back, the thoracic spine. The head is also supported. And remember again, if you're using a support for the neck, you neither want to flatten the neck or to hyperextend it. The support needs to just maintain the curve of the neck. And then travel to the body. Are you all supported? Are your feet supported? Are your knees supported? Your spine supported? Your head supported? Your arms supported? And how is your back? Now in back bends, the breath is in the front of the body. We're not stretching anything, but you've taken your shoulders back. The chest is spacious. The back is strengthening. And now begin again to focus on your breathing. And begin to inflate the lungs. So each inhalation, the chest expands, the abdomen expands. Each exhalation, push the breath out slowly from the tummy drawing back. And let each breath now come in. The position is open. The breath can fill into your expanded chest. And breathing out, you can mindfully empty the lungs, draw the tummy back. The tummy muscles push against the diaphragm, and the breath is pushed out of the lungs. Slow, relaxed, controlled breathing. So all of your attention on your breath. You have created the conditions for a fuller breath. Push the breath out to empty. Allow the breath to return, filling into the whole lung space, abdomen and chest expanding. Your attention is on your breathing. There's no struggle. As you send each breath out a little further, the incoming breath will come in deeper and fuller. Your nervous system calming down, soothing, you're relaxing. Your body is totally supported. Nothing is moving but the breath. You're there to receive it and to return it. You are in the Word. The Word is in you, connected by that thread of breath. Connected to the Word, connected to each other. We're again going to take 5 conscious breaths. When you've completed your 5 breaths, again, just wait for a moment, become body aware, and ask yourself, how do I move out of this? And then when you're ready to move, start to unfold yourself. Maybe release the arms. Maybe bend up the knees to get all closer. Slowly, mindfully. Gracefully. Come back. Come back again and just sit. Sit in a position where you feel your spine is well aligned. Head, neck, and spine. Pelvic, rib cage, and skull. Body soft and relaxed. Breath steady and fluid. So following the back bend with a twist, a restorative twist, and again there's the choice of 2 on page 11. We have the one where both knees are wrapped around the bolster, or where one leg is straight and the opposite knee rests on the bolster. You choose one. So this is our 4th spinal movement, spinal twist. Again, supporting the upper body, make sure you're using support for your neck, it's not too bulky. If you're using that. So straddling the bolster and tapping the knees to the floor on the right. Are you comfortable? We're all doing that way. forward. We're straightening out the one leg, bending up the other leg to cross over and be supported on the bolster. Now, what happens in the spinal twist, and this one, what we're doing in particular, then the upper body is flush on the floor. So the rib cage is on the floor. Your arms are expanded, supported. So the knees are moving one way, creating this rotation in the spine. Nice turn of the head. Or keep it straight, either way. Begin to breathe into the open side. Five breaths. Diaphragmatic breathing. So now in the position, the breath moves in the front, sides, and back of the rib cage. Flaring into the base of the lungs. But the only doing you need to do is on the exhale, push the breath out gently. The breath flows back in, the chest is open, the chest is spacious. Again, you're taking 5 breaths. Layering into that side again, that's open space, building capacity, relaxing deeply. Steady rhythmical breath. Stay with the breath, flow with the breath. Travel out as you exhale. Receive the incoming breath, feel the expansion as you inhale. And then, having completed 5 breaths, we'll again move out of the pose. Coming back slowly, mindfully. So what twist were you doing?
I was trying to do really
No,
nice one.
that there's the manual
Modification,
energy. It's not on that there, that's the manual up there.
That's what I had to do with one of my friends when I was doing it. She couldn't even go down anyway. So I thought I'll just enact it again myself.
Right, okay. So take it to the other side. So following the back bend with the twist, moving through the range of movements of the spine, that's our clasp now. Lovely. So most of you have fixed the rib cage and move the legs to either side, or you can fix the chest, as some of you have done, and move the legs. The result is this rotation of the spine. By feeling all the bits again that touch the floor, that you are supported through your feet and your legs, your pelvis, your spine, your rib cage, your arms, your head. So you're feeling supported, stable, secure. So you can drop the body. Just let it go. Then you can explore the breath. And there's not a lot to do. The only doing is send the exhalation out. The inhalation will come in and move into the space you've opened up. So each time you breathe out, draw the tummy back, send the breath out further, and then just wait. The breath floods you, flows back in deeply, front, sides, and back. Attention on the breath. Travel with it. Each incoming breath again, feel it expanding you, opening you, softening you. And each outgoing breath, you're dropping deeply into the depths of relaxation. Drop the body, open to the breath. So the earth holds you, draws you, takes all your tension, discomfort, and pain, and the breath softens you, opens you, expands you, nurtures you, heals you. The dance between breath and earth, over and over again. Inhale and exhale. Take 5 breaths again. And when you have that completed, slowly again start to come back. Take your time. The final pose we're going to do is just going to be constructive rest. You can support it if you wish, just lying on your back with your knees bent up. Because it's a symmetrical movement after the asymmetrical movement of the twist. So that one isn't in the book, so how would you support that? Well, it really isn't. Just lying on your back with your knees bent up. And you may, of course, use your bolster on the back. So once again, travel through the body. Do you need support on your feet? What about your heels? Are the heels on the ground? Do you need support under them? Arms resting, head supported. Hands facing the ceiling, so you're rotating the shoulders and rolling back to open the heart, to open the chest. An alignment pose again, so feel that the pelvic bowl, the rib cage, and the head are in alignment. The breath into your nose, sigh it out and drop into the body, drop your weight. The mouth is closed, and again the breath comes, the breath goes. The body drops to the earth, the ground is there to hold, to stabilize, to secure, but also to draw out tension, holding, pain. The only ask of you is that you let go. You let go. Drop your weight. Drop your very body, and slowly and gradually become the breath. Become that pulsing movement that is life itself. The ebb and the flow of your own breathing. Again, push the breath out a little further. Draw your tummy back as you breathe out. And the next breath comes in deeper, slower, lower. Gently travel out with the out breath. And feel the incoming breath flood into the lungs. Yoga asana helps in regulating breathing, makes our breathing more efficient, calms the nervous system. There is a place in all of us that we return to, where we can be ourselves, to be breathed by life, to be held by the earth, and we move deeper into stillness. Come home to stillness. From stillness, peace arises. It rises naturally. It's always there, but it gets lost in busyness. So from the stillness within, the peace arises. And can you place that word peace in your mind, so when you breathe in peace. And when you breathe out peace. So that word becomes your mantra. It's only a word that holds your mind's attention, so you're not getting lost in thought. Breathing in peace, breathing out peace. You are here now, no past, no future, just this moment. And what happens is that the word becomes the quality. And the quality of peace flows through you. Every cell of your being bathed in this quality of peace that is arising naturally. Breathe in peace and breathe out peace. And the word will become the quality. And then just let the word dissipate. The breath still rising, falling. And you brought your breath to the foreground. And now as we engage with the body again, to come back to the world of this room again, your breathing moves into the background. And your attention shifts firmly to your body again. So feel your body, feel your feet, feel your hands, feel the crown of your head, and start to move. Coaxing the body back into wakefulness, gentle movements. And then start to unfold yourself again. Pushing all those supports away. Held your knees in. Feel the full length of your spine against the floor. A lot. And then slowly roll over onto one side. Take a moment there. Become aware of your now body. And again, just ask yourself what has changed in the last half hour, if anything, and notice the tone in your body, space in your mind, the steadiness of your breath. And then when you're ready to return, push yourself back to sit. So all that was really was range of motion, taking just postures that take your spine to its range of motion, and that was the makings of a simple dance. So sit for a moment, put your hands on the ground, connect with the ground, connect with the earth, and then start to energize. Breathe in and fill the lungs and arms up. And breathing out, bow in gratitude to the breath that is your life. And again, breathe in and reach, filling the lungs, the gift is given. And breathe out gratitude to your body for doing practice. And again, energize more, breathe in, fill the lungs. And breathe out gratitude to each other for sharing the practice. And we bow in peace, the peace you brought to your own nervous system. We take our collective wish for peace and we send it now to the earth that needs it. And our prayer that all living beings may live in peace. Om Shanti, peace. Om Shanti, peace. And thank you for your attention. And good luck with your restorative classes. You've all a nice understanding of using all the props now, and off you go and teach.
All right. Thank you so much. Right, folks. So what we're saying there at the beginning, for tomorrow, you go, you know, and you make that class plan to teach each other tomorrow evening or tomorrow afternoon. The point is that, you know, and also on you this morning. So just bring all that in. I'll be doing a wee bit in the morning, and then you just corral the whole lot in, and then we just go out. And see. What? 1 hour. You're going to teach each other, you know, you're going to partner. All right. Non-areas. Roberta and Fiona, I'll give you a buzz after. All right, I'll touch base with you after. All right. So thank you so much. Well done, Roberta.
Thank you very much.